In a world hungry for change, nonprofit impact matters more than ever. Yet every day, you're asked to do more with less. Less time, fewer resources, and tools that weren't even built for the way nonprofits actually work. What if you could do more with more? That's the promise of Bloomerang, the giving platform built for purpose. Bloomerang integrates fundraising, donor, and volunteer management into one intuitive platform. It connects your data to reveal real opportunity, showing you who's ready to give, when to reach out, and how to deepen every relationship. Because when your tools are built for purpose, your mission goes further. More connection, more confidence, more impact. Now that's more like it. Learn how you can do more with more at bloomerang.com. That's bloomerang.com. Now on to the show. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. This is Julia Campbell. This is Nonprofit Nation. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, the question that we're asking and the challenge that we're addressing, nonprofits are producing more digital content than ever. It seems like emails and social posts and website updates and advocacy campaigns and text campaigns. But from what I have seen, many practitioners still feel like their work doesn't add up to a cohesive strategy. So in this episode, I'm going to speak with digital strategist Brad Caldana about how nonprofits can move from sort of executing scattered digital and AI tactics to leading with a clear strategic plan. Brad and I have known each other for quite a few years. I don't think ever met in person, though. I think we've just mostly lived in the digital world with each other. So happy to have you here, Brad.
Yeah. Thanks for having me in. Yeah. There's someone now with the Instagram handle. She does great stuff around digital for political campaigns. You're an extremely online friend. And it's funny having all of these online friends, right? People who I talk to via Zoom. We collaborate. There are folks also who I collaborate and have done trainings with for years now.
Yes.
That we've not met in person, which is pretty wild, but you still have these deep relationships because of all of this modern technology.
Well, you do a lot of digital summits, and you know I love virtual summits. So let's just tell people your website sort of from the beginning. So if they want to learn more about all the summits that you do.
Yeah, Center for Digital Strategy. We host a few different summits throughout the year. Our current format is 2 digital strategy summits throughout the year. Those either happen in a 1-week format or we're experimenting with sometimes now as a 2-week, multi-day a week to make it more accessible. This idea, one of the things I've realized is like we keep trying to replicate in-person summits online and they don't have to have the exact same format. That like actually fewer sessions over more days makes it more accessible to more people. And so we're experimenting with that. And in 2024, we introduced the AI for Nonprofits and Advocacy Summits. And those actually happen every 4 months. And so last one was just last month. Next one will happen, I think, in late July or August. But I joke all the time and I say, we could really host this every month. But
so much changes.
So much changes. But it would also be overwhelming for all of the speakers and everyone, right? So we're trying to do them every 4 months or so, bringing in different speakers covering a really wide range of all of the things AI for nonprofits and advocacy. And the digital strategy summits are really similar. All things digital strategy, fundraising, advocacy, engagement, analytics, digital, social, really just to give people a really accessible platform. And the content goes from beginner 101 to much more advanced kind of director level content. So we've got a little bit of something for everyone in the summits.
Oh, I love that. I know that you've spent more than 20 years at this intersection, technology, organizing, social impact. So what first drew you into digital strategy work for nonprofits and advocacy orgs?
It was really just kind of an intersection of passion. I had been working, really just an intersection of passions. I had been on the board of an environmental nonprofit in Miami Beach, and my free time was organizing different advocacy things, from film screenings around kind of social justice, civil rights issues. And I was also doing some freelance video and writing content for a travel and tourism blog when I was living in Miami, and took a job as a field organizer on the 2008 Obama campaign. And in working in the field, one of the things I always say is really funny. I was talking to the new media director then, and I asked them if we were using Twitter at all. And they were like, no, I've never heard of it. And the new media directors were really focused on the online platform, which is called Mybo. Those of you who might remember, those of you who knew, it was a pretty groundbreaking online platform for organizing events. And a little bit was a carryover from the Howard Dean kind of technology that they had built. And they were really focused on that and kind of content, and less on the emerging social media platforms. And I was like, yeah, I know that, nationally, Barack Obama is technically on it. I'm like, I don't really know if it'll be applicable to campaigns. I mean, maybe someday.
Twitter?
Yeah.
Remember when Twitter was Twitter? Oh, I miss those days.
Yeah.
I miss those first days.
Gave rise to someone who took the Oval Office, right? Because of their Twitter persona, right? Like crazy. So, stayed in that space for a really long time. Went from working in the field to working at the DNC doing state new media strategy. And then hosted one of the first trainings I did there was Twitter for organizing. It was an interesting two-part step of and I stuck around in that space for a really long time. I was the digital training director for the 2012 campaign. I helped work on the battleground state strategies, and really a big focus on how do we train and mentor all of the state digital directors and staff? How do we help field staff understand digital, and also building out some training programs for volunteers? How do we help them scale out their own understanding of digital for more impact?
Absolutely. I love that you played a key role in digital training for the Obama 2012 presidential campaign. Huge fan of Barack Obama over here. But what lessons from that campaign kind of still apply to nonprofit digital strategy today? What can we take away from that?
Yeah, there are several really key things to think about. One is the investment in training and skills. When we were hiring state digital directors, most people didn't have the background of being director. They had been in digital marketing, maybe that focused, mostly on content, or, maybe they ran email somewhere, or maybe they were managing some part of a digital campaign at that time, but probably hadn't spent a lot of time with digital ads or whatever, right? And so to fully give them autonomy, they needed to know all of these other things, right? And I think that actually holds true for digital leadership today too, that most people who you might promote in your organization aren't going to have a holistic strategy view. They're going to have learned a niche that they are really strong in, whether that is creative content, social media, maybe advertising, maybe email. And it's a different set of skills to actually build out a holistic digital program, right? And so I think there's a huge piece of that. And I was super fortunate that we had in HQ, there were about 200 people on the digital team, a big email department, ads, analytics, folks working on the website. There were another 200 people in the States, and there were 200 people working on the tech side of things, right? A whole different department building the deep infrastructure, the infrastructural side of the website and the different apps that we were using. And so I was able to tap into the people in those different departments and help translate that to the people working in the States, right? And also help translate what the people in the States needed and what people doing field organizing and advocacy needed, which is different because a lot of the folks, who were coming in and doing ads, analytics, whatever it was, they weren't coming from the nonprofit space. They're coming from the corporate space, right? And so there are things lost in translation there that are mission critical, right? I think while there's a lot of overlap to what campaigns, nonprofits, mission driven orgs do and companies, there are also some really big gaps, right? In stewardship and relationship is really different, right? And so I think some of those things still hold really true. So the really big takeaway is the training, like helping upskill people. The thing that kind of goes along with that is holistic strategy. So having an actual strategy that thinks through the sum of the parts. And a piece I always go to in my foundational training, but in all of my training is having really, and this is the strategic part too, having really clear organizational goals that you're then translating to your programs. Because a lot of times in digital strategy, folks get lost on tactics versus the big picture goals. And so, in the Obama campaign, it was pretty simple. Does this clearly get us votes? Does it get us money or volunteers? All of which at the end are to get votes, right? You don't almost think of the other two as superseding that. Does this get us more votes? And that would actually come up in questions, right? We were talking about Google Plus, and I was like, we got to get on that.
Oh my gosh, Google Plus.
Yeah.
Blast from the past.
Those who don't remember, it was Google's attempt at one of their many attempts at a social media platform that failed. And they did a deep dive with a intern. We came up with, kind of our analysis of it. And the digital director and the senior digital director at the time asked me, they're like, can you help us translate and understand how does this actually get us votes or volunteers, right? And if it can't do that, then it's a waste of our time. Yep. And I think it's true with all organizational digital, right? Is the thing we're doing clearly translating to our actual goals? And if not, then, something's got to change.
Totally. I agree with you. I love that you emphasize moving from tactics to strategy, because that's a lot of what I teach, because it's sort of posting an Instagram reel, that's a tactic. That's not a strategy. Yeah. That is hopefully a tactic that will get you to your goal. But being strategic means having that sort of North Star that everything is tied to. And I think with social media especially, it's challenging because oftentimes social media posts don't have that red line kind of ROI, return on investment. So it might be building trust, it's building leadership, but I think building followers, building awareness, building website traffic, all of that is going to be leading to your organizational goals, whether they be increased volunteers, increased donations, in the case of a political campaign, increasing votes. I love the focus that you have from tactics to strategy. So let's kind of shift over to AI. I've had a lot of podcasts on AI for nonprofits. I just was at the AFP, the Association for Fundraising Professionals, international conference, and there were several sessions on AI. But the issue at the conference was that you're not supposed to go outside the presentation software. So you can't go on the internet and actually do a demonstration. So I was thinking that's just so representative of our sector. We want to talk about AI in this philosophical sense and do a bunch of slide deck, present a bunch of information, but we're not actually showing people, where do you see the biggest opportunities for nonprofits right now in this space?
So we actually ran an AI for nonprofits and advocacy cohort last fall. We were hoping to get it running again. We will get it running again. I had some personal health issues for the last few months. And so otherwise, there would have been another AI cohort. And much of what we do in the AI summits is actually, a lot of it is, here is how you do. And that's a big part of what I've always done in our digital strategy summits as well, is always kind of lean on that with speakers too, is some of it is always theoretical. Some stuff needs to be theoretical. How can we show people how to do the thing, right? And so, folks who are just getting started, I honestly think that the thing I teach on in this is workflows. Is there a workflow that you go through every day that you can figure out how to incorporate AI to make it more efficient? And for those of you who don't, it's funny because also the phrase workflow is not always super clear, right? Workflow is the set of steps that you do to do a thing, right? And so, in email, your workflow might be, conception of, what is it that we need to send? And then it's ideally the targeting up front, right? So like, who are we targeting with this email campaign? What is it that we're trying to do? Then the content, right? We have to produce the content. We have to work through edits and approvals. And then we have to send it. And then we have to analyze it, ideally afterwards as well, right? I think there's a couple of steps in there. A lot of orgs still aren't doing enough analysis on the back end.
Right.
And so if we're thinking about the workflow, and I think in orgs too, that some folks are good at using the phrase SOPs, standard operating procedures. It's another name for workflow, right? It's like, what are the steps we take to get there? And I'll just give you that example, right? So step one is like, okay, we're starting this campaign. It is a little divergent depending on how your organization handles, tracks, maintains data. And I'll just say like, step one, do not put your organization's data in ChatGPT or any of the other LLMs. That you can use AI-assisted analysis. You should not put your supporters' private info and email list data into one of those, right? But it's happening. And so in this workflow, though, ideally, most ideal is we've got a data system where we can like ask the AI, like, who would be great targets for this fundraising campaign or to volunteer to host these events or like come to our whatever. When we don't have that, we use other ways to do data. But step two is like, okay, based on what we know about our people, could you help me get started with a draft? One of the things I've really loved about AI, and I think there's a really strong correlation of folks who work in digital content and have ADHD. The more I've talked about having ADHD, and a lot of us elder millennials and even younger millennials getting diagnosed as an adult, finding out a whole bunch of us in digital content. And I think to me, it's also, it's very ADHD. I'm about to go off on another topic. I won't do that. But having ADHD, helping me kickstart the draft of the email, super helpful. So you might hear this phrase human in the loop a lot, right? And so I don't want it to draft the whole thing, but I'm going to give it some content. And it can even be as simple as like, here's our landing page for the event. Can you do a first draft of, invite for this event? And that just helps my brain look at it and be like, oh, great. Here's what I want to change, because that's not how we format our emails. And here, on the higher levels, there's training and things you can do to your AI to help it understand and look at the emails you normally send, right? Like, oh, I want it to look more like this event email we sent before. And then, you can, folks always get stuck on subject lines to test, right? And you can say, hey, give me a couple great subject lines. And even if it gives you 5 and you only use 2 and there's 2 but it helps you kickstart those thoughts, right? Now you've got an email. I think for a lot of folks, the getting started process really is like 30 minutes to an hour. Process. And so it's like, oh, you've taken the getting started from 30 minutes to an hour, right? People are kind of like, they're like trying to work through that first paragraph and overthinking it. You've turned that into a 2-minute process. And so you've cut that out. And then, you get it out there, you send it out into the world, even if it's just that one email. But some of these platforms, and especially like my friends at Change Agent, who theirs is specifically built for nonprofits and advocacy, its AI will actually say, hey, was this supposed to be part of like a multi-email series? Because we could draft for you the next 3 emails in the series. Or, hey, do you need landing page copy or social copy to help go along with this? And so it's about that efficient time saving in those workflows is the best place to get started.
Right. I think the time saving. I think where nonprofits get stuck here is that they just think of the tactics first. They're like, oh, I just want to get on AI, or I need to send an email. I need to write a blog post. I need to post an Instagram reel. How can we be more strategic? Like, what are the biggest strategic mistakes you think organizations are making around AI and digital? And how can we pull it all together so that we're making sure that we're all on the same page at our organization?
The biggest mistakes in digital AI and digital AI. I think I'm going to break this into three answers. The biggest mistake in digital is not having actual holistic digital strategy,
Right.
meaning an organizational wide strategy that is thinking about, and I talk about the three pillars: strategy, capacity, and infrastructure. And developing a holistic organizational strategy, and then a by campaign or department strategies that interlink, right? I think we still have a lot of organizational disconnects. Building out the actual capacity we need to lead on those strategies. I think a lot of orgs, it is truly, I think a lot of orgs are still underfunded in the right places in digital, which is a hard thing to say without going super deep, but it's really understanding, well, if these are our strategic goals, how do we have the internal and or external? And I think for most orgs, it really is the best strategy is a balance of internal and external capacity, to send emails, to update your website, to do all of the things you want to do. And then infrastructure, I break that into a number of things, but I think we don't think enough about as like our CRM, our email platform as actual organizational infrastructure. And we think about just like this other thing, but it is a part of a modern organization's infrastructure. It is how you fundraise, manage relationships, and build an online presence it is no longer abstract. I think sometimes people still think of like online and digital as abstract, as separate from our standard lives, but it's not. It is a daily part of our lives and a daily part of like how we interact with the world, right? And so those pieces. And the other thing I encourage people to think about as infrastructure is your social media presence, your email list, right? And those I break into owned and loaned, right? Your email, your SMS list, you have a lot more control over. I think of those as owned, right? It's a way you can.
It's permission based.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. It's more intimate.
And the loaned being the social, because you never know how social platforms are going to change, right? And it's less predictable.
Like Twitter, right?
Yeah. R.I.P.
Seriously.
But it's part of your infrastructure, right? You can't, you'd have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have the reach and infrastructure and capacity to do it, then you're not going to create the impact you want that actually impacts your organizational goals, right? So I think there is all that to say that the fine point, a holistic, complete organizational digital strategy that informs and leads, and then creating strategies by campaigns and goals that actually align to the goals and missions, right? As opposed to tactical, where we're just like, oh, we will do X thing, so we need to do X thing. So I think that's the biggest downfall there. The AI downfalls, I think number one is not having a plan, policy, strategy to just start using it now. I think a lot of folks are held up in, I now see organizations who have been talking about policies for a year. And there's an issue there with what they call AI shadow use or shadow AI, where people are using AI and no one else in the org knows about it. They're using it without guardrails because there's not a policy. And so, the policy should be simple and adaptable. In the last summit, one of the leaders who talks about AI policy, and she, the whole session is like an AI policy in 90 minutes. In this session, it needs to be a guardrail, and AI is going to keep changing so much that if you are meeting once a month as an organization to discuss your AI policy, you're going to keep being confused about what it should be. And that stopping the work from happening. And my theory, I think a lot of the folks who are actually doing AI is that like you need a simple policy, guardrails. It should match your data policy. Lots of orgs don't have a true data policy, so it's a good time to get one, right? And so
there's a lot of silos, and they should all be sort of working together.
Yeah, and so just getting healthy guardrails set up and ways for people to report and share their AI use, right? And so that way you can see how they're using it. People can be talking about it. And I think just opening up the permissions and the culture to say that we're orgs, it's weird. Some orgs are like still asking how they're going to adopt AI, but AI has adopted them. It doesn't matter. Like, we've passed that point, because like, if you're using the Google Suite or Microsoft, well, like most orgs are using one of the two of those,
right?
AI is built in, right?
Is built in.
And people are like, it's just there asking and answering questions for you. And so instead of like the question being, are we going to use it? It's the question of how are we going to use it? And what are the guardrails? And, like one of them is super simple, is like no personal data, right? You're never putting these things in these unapproved tools. 2 is like reporting the tools you are using and like sharing that back, because it's also hard for an org to create policies and guardrails without knowing what the tools are doing, what data it's accessing, what info is going there. And so, it's really that. It's the big mistake is not having quick, transparent policies to allow people to adopt it.
What do you think about the debate I've been hearing where some nonprofits think that if you are using an AI tool to craft content, that you need to disclose it? For me, I think that, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence. I guess it depends. But, I help organizations craft social media content. So do I get credit for that? Like, I don't need the credit for that. Fundraising consultants help write direct mail pieces all the time. Do you need to disclose that? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
That's my thought. And that's what I've heard other people say as well, is like, did you ever credit a ghostwriter? Right? Like, how many...
Like, I've been a hired grant writer. I was a hired grant writer for years when I started my business.
Yeah. And, there were kind of the like lightweight AI tools. And it's funny. I think some of these companies had to relabel and rebrand that their platform actually was AI after the LLMs took off. But like Grammarly, folks have been using Grammarly for a while. For a while now, Grammarly has been able to help you write paragraphs. And no one was citing Grammarly as like having helped them write a paragraph. It's an assisted tool. It's a ghostwriter. It's a whatever it is. And so I do not think that is necessary, because just as you said, you have all these consultants and different people writing for other people. We didn't cite them. And so I don't think that that's necessary.
I know. The only time I would say is like if you have a statistic, like make sure you're citing the source.
Yeah. I mean, citing factual documents and information you're pulling from somewhere else. Yes. Right. And even if AI is helping you pull in stats and statistics, you should still cite the original source material and double check it for sure. AI is still not great on that.
Check it. Oh, so a fun story about using ChatGPT. My family and I just went on vacation to LA and San Francisco for spring break. And we were looking at the Hollywood, Walk of Stars. And we were asking where all the specific stars were. And ChatGPT was giving us like walking directions and exactly where they were. And my son is a huge fan of John Williams, the composer. And we figured John Williams had a star. So we asked, where's a John Williams star? And ChatGPT kept telling us, this one place across from the Roosevelt Hotel, this one place across from the Roosevelt Hotel. We looked around literally for 30 minutes. And I wrote back and I said, look, are you sure that this is where it is? And they said, oh, actually, John Williams doesn't have a star. Like 99% of the stars were correct, but that 1% of the time. So that's why you do always have to fact check, make sure that, the sources are cited correctly. But I thought that was actually pretty funny.
Were you using audio for it at all?
I was using audio.
Audio is actually even worse with facts.
Really?
And it doesn't tell time well. All of LLMs they're a prediction engine. They are looking at everything that all of the data it can find, it has been trained on before, and what is most likely to happen, right? And I know that can be confusing for folks, but it's, when you ask it to like help me write this email, what its crazy neural networks are doing is, one of them is, and it's tricky to explain, but like basically inside of these LLMs, right? The large language model, which is the backbone of ChatGPT, Claude, Change Agent. There are all of these what they call nodes that are trained on information, and the nodes talk to each other to help output the thing. Crazy thing is we do not know what happens inside of a node. We only can see the output, and you can train it and kind of give it parameters. And so, the different, when you're writing, it's like one node is, essentially saying like, oh, I know what an email is. And another one is saying, oh, I understand what a fundraising, a nonprofit email, and I know this thing, and I know this thing, and I know this thing. And they somehow talk to each other and spit out the thing for you and write it, right? And, that's also what our brain does, right? Like, we don't think about that process, but we think about all those things and we put it together. The voice, for whatever reason, is even more, and I've seen it do both of these things. It is trying to suggest what it thinks should happen, and then it goes into a self-reinforcing loop. That's what you saw, where
it wanted to make me happy.
It wanted to make you happy, but then it kept reinforcing itself that it's right.
Right.
There are these great videos on like someone asking about time, and someone will be like, I just ran a mile, or, hey, ChatGPT, time me. I'm going to go run a mile and give me the time when I'm back. And the person waited 30 seconds and said, I'm back. And they're like, great job. You ran a 10-minute mile. And the person's like, I've only been gone for 30 seconds. How is it possible? And it's like, he's like, there's no way you ran that long. Right. And so it's this weird prediction engine thing. And so, it is incredibly important that we always say human in the loop. Right. And so it's a great assistant. It's great at helping. It's great at organizing, producing things, and speeding up processes. And you still need to stay incredibly in the loop.
Human in the loop. I love that. That should be the title of your book.
Yeah. I've been contemplating, and the folks who might know it, I wrote a book called The Digital Plan, which is essentially a framework for digital strategy. And I've been thinking about basically a new version of digital strategy in the AI era. And I guess that's it. It's, human in the loop, digital strategy in the AI era.
Yes. I love that. I could see that at an airport and picking it up and buying it. Like that's sort of what I'm thinking of. I can see that title. This has been fantastic. Where can people find your book? Where can they find out more about your summits and sort of connect with you on socials?
Yeah, centerfordigitalstrategy.com is the main place. You can find
the repository, hub, I should say.
Yeah, the book, The Digital Plan, is on Amazon. I don't link to it as much. It's funny. It's a couple years old. All of the strategic things kind of hold the same and hold true. Like, people still tell me, they're like, oh yeah, I got the book recently. I'm like, oh my God, I keep thinking I want to get a new version out there. But a lot of it is like the core things I talked about in the beginning. It's like the goals, strategy, infrastructure, and I could talk for hours on each of the subjects. But I'm thinking about working on the new version of the book. And we definitely have some new stuff coming out on Substack and potentially podcast to talk more about AI and nonprofits, and really more of the practical. That's kind of my thing throughout. Yes. Like you said, people need to see the how. And so my passion is really showing the how. Here's how you do it. Here's how you think about this. Here's how you create that change with digital and AI.
Thanks for coming on, for sharing your insights, for sharing your practical strategies for how we can implement it. And I will put all the links in the show notes. And hopefully we will connect again soon.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.